when Bartimaeus begins, usually when you talk about the construction of a novel or of a plot, you talk about how the plot is ordered. Is it chronological? That is, does it begin at the beginning and go to the end? That's one way. Another way is, does it work by flashback? That is, you get introduced and then somebody remembers something and you see an event of the past, and that kind of happens periodically throughout. Okay. Does it begin what's called in Latin in medias res, which means in the middle of things? Okay. Depending upon how far you got, and probably even if you only got 2 or 3 chapters in, of these, which does Bartimaeus follow? Is it chronological? No, it's not. Because what's he doing in the very first chapter? He's summoning title character Bartimaeus. Okay. Notice also, usually when a book is named after a person or a story is named after a person, that's the person the story is about. Okay. Is the story about Bartimaeus? Kind of. Shall we?
Yeah, mostly Nathaniel, I think.
It's mostly Nathaniel. Nathaniel is really, I think it's safe to say, the protagonist. Protagonist means first or chief sufferer. Okay? But we don't think of a protagonist really as the chief sufferer. We think of the protagonist as the chief character, the main character. Lord of the Rings, if you've read Lord of the Rings, who's the main character? Frodo. Okay? Harry Potter. It's Harry Potter. Star Wars, especially the first 3. Luke Skywalker. It's not Darth Vader's story. It's Luke Skywalker's story. Okay? Chronicles of Prydain. It's not Dalbin. It's not Call. It's not Gurgi. It's Taran's story. These are not ultimately Bartimaeus' story. They are the character Nathaniel's story, or the name he is given later on. So he starts off Nathaniel. Notice, no last name. Okay. But he's given a name, John Mandrake. Okay? So that in, I don't know, how far in is this? After the first, third or so of this novel, he's referred to everybody but one person as John Mandrake. Okay? And then we get into the second and third novels, he's referred to by almost everyone else as John Mandrake. Bartimaeus never calls him this. He always calls him this. Okay? But there are going to be a few other characters who will start to call him this because they find out what's called his birth name. So, it begins this way. Because when it begins, this character is not at his youngest point. We will see the character at his youngest point fairly shortly after the novel opens. That is, when the novel opens, he is 12, I believe, 11 or 12. And then we go back in time. It's not a flashback, however. We start here, and then we go back to the beginning of his, so to speak, story. Even though it's Bartimaeus, okay? Who or what is Bartimaeus? He's a demon, okay? Does he like being called a demon? What is he really? A, that's plural, he is a jinn. Okay? We kind of spell this in modern English this way. G-E-N-I. A genie. Disney's coming out, there's nobody creative anymore in Hollywood because all they're doing is repeats. With Aladdin again. Okay? What is Aladdin's big blue friend? He's one of these things. Okay? He's Will Smith. He's a genie, or he was, Robin Williams before he hung himself. Sorry, crass. So we open with Bartimaeus being summoned. And the opening voice is Bartimaeus, and we get the description of him being summoned. And page 4, we're told, the speaker says it was his first time. Right? Wanted to scare him. I did too. The dark-haired boy stood in a pentacle of his own, smaller, filled with different runes. What's a pentacle? It's a 5-pointed star. But the point, I can never draw that right. I can't draw backwards. The point is on the bottom. Okay? Modern English is called a pentagram. Okay? So it's that within a circle. Okay? Nathaniel, the 12-year-old boy, is in one of these. And when he summons this genie, the genie is in one of those also. We're going to find out in the course of the novels why this is important. One, the pentacle can't be like mine. Why? Because that line and that line are not joined. There's an opening. Okay? And notice my circle around it, that end of the line and this part of the line are not joined. Okay? So that would enable a jinn, if this is the pentacle I'm summoning him into or her into, that would enable that jinn to get out. Okay? Now, the being that is, I don't have his name up there, Bartimaeus, as we've talked about, is in our language, in human language, referred to as a demon. He doesn't refer to himself as a demon. Why not? What kind of connotation does demon have? Evil, not good. Is Bartimaeus evil? Is Bartimaeus kind of like, depending on what horror films you've seen, the thing that possesses, I can't remember her name in the movie, Linda Blair in 1973's The Exorcist? No, he's not. He is not. Within the constraints of the world of this novel, he is not a quote-unquote fallen angelic being. Okay? He is just a different kind of creature. Okay? In the Middle Ages, they thought there were all kinds of these things in the air all around us. Okay? Going back, they thought of them also. So, he says, I'm going to scare the living daylights out of them. All right? So, the boy's in his thing, pale as a corpse, shaking like a dead leaf, etc., etc. All well and good, but so what? I mean, he looked about 12 years old, wide-eyed, hollow-cheeked. Why is he wide-eyed? Scared? Why else? Partially, why is he scared? Well, one, this is what's popped up. Okay? Why else? Have you ever done something or attempted something, actually done it, and been really surprised that you were able to do that? That's what he's just experienced. I can't believe I actually did it. Okay? So he says, I floated around, I had, blue flames licking up, etc., etc. And the kid speaks. Tells him what he wants him to do. Okay? And so Bartimaeus tells him who he is. Why? Because the kid says, tell me who you are. Are you that Bartimaeus who in olden times was summoned by the magicians to repair the walls of Prague? Czech Republic, right? The Czech Republic's going to figure, or Czechoslovakia, is going to figure pretty largely in these novels. Why? They're not set in our real world. It is like a mirror of our universe. So there's a London, there's a United States, there's a Germany, there's a France, there's Czech Republic, okay? Prague is kind of like the opposing capital to London. Berlin, Paris, they don't matter. Rome doesn't matter, okay? So, what does Bartimaeus say? I am Bartimaeus, I am Sakar al-Jini, Ingorsa the Mighty, the Serpent of Silver Plumes. I have rebuilt the walls of Uruk, Karnak, and Prague. Okay, Uruk is where? Anybody know? It's a real place, by the way. Karnak is a real place, by the way. Uruk, ancient Mesopotamia. Cradle of civilization, as it used to be called. Karnak, Lower Egypt. Okay, Great Temple of Karnak. And in Prague. What he's saying is, I rebuilt not only Prague, but I was around back at the beginning of your puny human civilization. Well, when was that? About 5,000 years ago. Okay. I've spoken with Solomon. Who's Solomon? Son of David. You know, God grants him a wish. Wisest man in the world. Builds the temple in Jerusalem, etc. I've run with the buffalo fathers of the plains. In other words, he's kind of saying, you know, I'm not just some white Western demon. I hang around also with non-Western peoples, the Native Americans. I've watched over old Zimbabwe, that is, and old Africa too. Old Zimbabwe is real. You know, it used to be thought 500, 1,000 years ago, there was nothing of significance in Africa. Well, about 20, 30 years ago, old Zimbabwe was discovered. Huge, capital-like city. Okay. I am Bartimaeus. I recognize, O Master, so I charge you in your turn, boy. Who are you to summon me? Well, you can imagine his eyes get a bit bigger after that. Okay. So, what's the kid do? He doesn't respond. He doesn't tell him what he wants to know. Okay? So he gives Bartimaeus a charge. But before he does, that page 6, Bartimaeus, we're told, I'd rather hope the kid would be blustered by it into telling me his name in return, which would give me something to go on when his back was turned. Footnote. I couldn't do anything while I was in the circle, of course. But later I'd be able to find out who he was, look for weaknesses of character, things in his past I could exploit. They've all got them. Who's the they? Us, humans. And then notice what he says. Because the footnotes are Bartimaeus speaking. He says, they've all got them. You've all got them. Why did you change the they to you? Okay. What else? He's specifically addressing his readers. They is third person. You know, those people out there. To go from they to you means you, the dear reader, the sucker who bought my book. Okay? You have what? You have weaknesses of character in your past. And if I ever get hold of you, okay, that's his implication. So, we're told that the boy tells him to summon or to find the amulet of Samarkand and bring it to him. By the way, Samarkand, real place, amulet of Samarkand, a real archaeological discovery, think it was, I might have a note written in here somewhere. I think it was in the 1950s or 60s. And this amulet, this like round brooch thing that you wear around your neck, if I remember correctly, it's thought that it's about 3,000 years old. Now, we don't necessarily think, archaeologists and anthropologists don't necessarily think that it's a magical talisman kind of a thing, but Stroud, doing research, finds this thing and goes, I can work with this, okay? So, he says, what? He says, you don't know what you're asking for. This is dangerous. Kid commands him, find it, come back when I call you. Page 8. He's dismissed, and we're told, my bowels felt as if they were being passed over by a steamroller. I sensed my form waver, flicker. There was power in this child, though he was very young. See, normally, a 12-year-old, we find out, shouldn't be able to do this. Okay? So, chapter 2. He leaves, Bartimaeus leaves, to go off and find the thing he's supposed to find. And he tells us, page 9, 5 things are bothering him about this summoning and about this charge. Okay? For a start, first, the dull ache that comes with every physical manifestation was already beginning. What's he mean, every physical manifestation? What is Bartimaeus in his essence? He's spirit. He has no physicality. So, when he has to take on a physical form, it weighs him down. It's like turning something that is a gas to a solid. Okay? That's the first thing. Notice, that's unpleasant. That's not comfortable. 2, weather. Enough said. If you're a spirit, weather doesn't bother you. Whether it's cold, hot, hail, rain. But if you're material, then the weather starts to affect your materiality. Okay? 3rd, I'd forgotten the limitations of material bodies. Why? He's got an itch above his beak, and he can't scratch it. Notice, it's pretty minor, but if you've ever had an itch that you can't scratch, it becomes something major pretty quickly. 4th, the kid. Who was he? Why does he want to do this? That is, he's got a death wish. How would I get even with him if he died before he died for subjecting me to this assignment? And then the last thing, the amulet. Potent charm. What's this kid going to do with that? Okay? So he's got these 5 problems. He goes on. He doesn't want to, but he has to obey the kid. Why? Because he's been charged. He goes to the house, and I'm going to skip a bunch. He finds the place where the amulet is. Page 16. He goes in, and he overhears a conversation. And we're told, a human who listened to the conversation would probably have been slack-jawed with astonishment, for the magician's account of corruption in the British government was remarkably detailed. Okay? So, he overhears this conversation, and he tells us, man, this government is rotten to the core. But I, for one, was not agog. Why? Having seen countless civilizations, a far greater panache than this one, crumble into dust, I could rouse little interest in the matter. Okay? But, he says, I spent the time fruitlessly trying to recall which unearthly powers might have been bound into Simon Lovelace's service. Why? Best to be prepared. Now, we're not told, we haven't been told really yet, anything about the varying levels of these beings. But we are going to be told pretty shortly. There are multiple levels. This particular one, relatively high, not the highest by any means. Okay? So, He looks on what are called the seven planes. He sees some things. He doesn't see some things elsewhere. And we're told, page 18, he's in a room and he becomes a child. And he tells us why he becomes or became that child. I became a boy I'd known once before, someone I had loved. Now, the someone I had loved, he became a boy, means human. He's not human, but he had loved this boy. His dust had long ago floated away along the Nile. He's telling us ancient Egypt. Okay? So my crime would not hurt him, and anyhow it pleased me to remember him like this. Brown skinned, bright-eyed, dressed in a white loincloth. This image and this boy are going to figure prominently throughout all of the books. Why? Because this is essentially the chink in Bartimaeus' armor. This is his weak spot. Okay? Or, might be another way of thinking of it. It might not be a weak spot. It might be a strength that we find out later. Okay? So, we get a long footnote, and the footnote tells us all the kinds of stuff he sees in this room. And they're all magical objects. Okay? And he says, towards the end of that footnote, page 18, magicians love this kind of thing. They love the hocus-pocus mystery of it all. Half believe it, some of them. And they adore the awe-inspiring effect it has on outsiders. Quite apart from anything else, all these knickknacks distract attention from the real source of their power. Us. The real source of their power. What's the there refer to? The power of the skulls from tombs, saints' knucklebones, spirit sticks, bottles filled with blood, witch doctor masks? Yes, possibly. The there is delightfully ambiguous because it also refers to magicians. What do you may not be aware yet. The non-magical people, the non-magicians in London and elsewhere in England and in Prague and such, they think magicians' power comes from where? The magicians themselves. That they're born with this power. Okay? In the Harry Potter novels, you either have it or you don't. You're either born with the power, you're born with magical ability, or you're not. You cannot learn it. You cannot be taught it. In this world, you do learn it. You read and study books, okay? And you're trained by a master. So, talks about some things he sees. A summoning horn. Where have we seen one of those? Prydain. The horn that washes up after the castle of Lear falls, and Dolly tells them, this is a summoning horn. It's got one summons left in it. Okay. What else? An eye made out of clay. He says, I'd seen one of them before in the head of a golem. The next book is titled The Golem's Eye. Okay. And there's the amulet of Samarkand. He tells us what it looks like. Okay. Let's skip a little bit. Talks about it being found in the 1950s, long before it had been stolen by magicians to recognize its value and such. And he runs into two old acquaintances. Jabor and Farquhar. Might be Farquhar. Okay. And what are we told, let's see here, about them? Are they the same level as he is? No. They're a little bit higher. Okay? And I'm going to skip how he gets away from them, but he does get away. Let's see here. Pick up with chapter 5, Nathaniel, page 27. So he gets away, and we pick up with Nathaniel and his master. Okay? So his master is teaching him. Above all, there's one fact we must drive into your wretched little skull now so that you never afterward forget. Can you guess what that is? No. He says, really? No? This. Demons are very wicked. They will hurt you if they can. Do you understand this? Okay. Do you understand? He kind of says, yes, sir. I do understand. Page 28, he gives a long, paragraph. Demons are wicked. They're hurtful. They will hurt you if you let them, sir. He repeats. Okay. So, his teacher, his master, says, have you ever seen a demon? He says, no. Well, I mean, pictures of them in books. Okay. And he points towards his study. He says, do you know what's in there? He says, your study. That's right. Go in there, go down the steps, go to my desk. On the desk is a box. In the box is a pair of spectacles. Put them on and come back to me. Got that? It's pretty clear, right? He says, yes. Okay. So he goes in, opens the door, walks down the steps, goes across the room, goes to the desk, finds the box, but he has a feeling that something's watching him. He turns around, there's nothing there. Okay. He thought he heard a noise, but there's nothing there. The room's empty. He sees the box. He reaches out, knocks over some pins. He hears a chuckle, turns around, nothing there. Something taps on the window, but there's nothing there. One of the pins rolls off the desk onto the carpet. Now, the pin hasn't been rolling the whole time. It just starts rolling on its own. If you're at a film, at a movie, and something on a desk starts moving on its own, what do you immediately assume? There's something there. Pretty soon, all the pins are moving. Something laughs. He doesn't see anything. He reaches out. Nothing there. He reaches for the spectacles. He grabs them. Something comes behind him. He hears it hopping. He's almost at the door, and the door slams shut. He doesn't have the glasses on yet. He gets to the doorknob. He turns around, and he doesn't see anything. And then he remembers the glasses. He's hearing noises, but he doesn't see anything. And he puts the glasses on. Page 33. And he saw the truth about the study. 100 small demons filled every inch of the space in front of him, stacked on top of each other. And at the very moment he puts on the spectacles, what do the demons realize? He can see us. See, when he can't see them, what can't they do to him? They can't really scare him. But once he can see them, they lunge. They go. And now he sees 100 things coming right at him. Okay? We're told, page 34. The boy was still there 20 minutes later. So, 20 minutes after he puts on the glasses and starts to see the demons, and the demons come at him and start climbing on him, clawing at him, beating at him. 20 minutes later, he's still there. when his master came to fetch him and dismissed the company of imps. Okay, imps are real low level. They can't do much. He was carried to his room. Why? Why carried? He was in shock. He was incapacitated. For a day and night he did not eat. For a further week he remained mute and unresponsive. Unresponsive kind of implies like he's in a coma, catatonic state. But at length he regained his speech and was able to resume his studies. His master never referred to the incident again, and we're told this was one of Nathanael's earliest experiences. He was 6 years old at the time. Okay, so describe his master. Is this just good old tough love? No. It's not love of any kind, first of all. His master has no love for him at all. Okay? So what is it? How did he begin the lesson? Demons are what? Very wicked. If you let them, they will hurt you. And what did he do? He let them hurt the boy for 20 minutes. Why? Drill that lesson in. The boy will never forget that lesson, will he? For as long as he lives, he's going to remember being 6 years old and terrorized by these things. Okay? Then we go back to Bartimaeus. And notice, so what happened in chapter 5? We went to 6-year-old Nathanael. When we first meet Nathanael, Bartimaeus says, looks about 12. So we go back to 6 years old. Now we come back up to the present. Okay? And let's see, we're going to skip a bit. Bartimaeus gets accosted by some kids. One of the kids, a girl, says she knows he's wearing something around his neck. It's covered. She can't literally physically see it with her eyes. It's underneath his tunic. But she knows it's there somehow. And he's kind of like, how does she know that? All right. Go back to up to chapter 8, because he hasn't delivered the amulet yet. Okay? Chapter 8. And we're finally told the name of the boy's master, Arthur Underwood. Okay? Middle-ranking magician who works for the Ministry of Internal Affairs. And what do we see happen? We see Arthur Underwood in this chapter get the boy, who's not been named so far. Okay? So we're told, page 51, you can pick him up from the day room. Him, it's a boy. Yep, boy, 5 years old. Very bright, tests or anything to go by. A little upset at the moment. Well, why is he a little upset at the moment? His parents sold him. Yeah, gave him up, but they gave him up for money. Okay? All the normal safety birth records removed, destroyed. He's been told, forget his birth name. You can start with him from scratch. So, he's 5 years old. His incident with the demons happens the next year. So, the man sees the boy, and the boy is kind of wedged between a, page 52, grimacing rocking horse and a plastic wizard doll. He'd been crying in the recent past, but had now fortunately desisted. I'm Underwood, your master. Your true life begins now. Come with me. True life. Everything in your previous 5 years. Wait, how much of which does that boy remember, by the way? 3 years old and on, maybe 2 years old. Child sniffs. With some distaste, he took the boy by the hand, pulling it to its feet, and led it down the corridors to the car. Notice, with some distaste. Why? He doesn't want to touch this kid. Snot-nosed, whining little brat. Okay? So he takes him to their home, introduces him to his wife, Martha, and says, you won't get any sense out of him. She's like, come on, do you wonder? He's terrified. Leave him to me. All right? So she tells the boy, still don't know the boy's name, page 53. I know you've been told not to tell anyone your name, but you can make an exception with me. Can he? Or let me put it this way. Should he? No, he shouldn't. If what Underwood told him is entirely correct, demons are wicked. What did Bartimaeus say when he was first summoned? Once I find out his name, then I'll have an in on him. So, you can make an exception. I can't just call you boy, because he won't get a real name until he's 12. So what are they going to call him until then? Boy. Okay. So she says, I'm Martha. Now, what's your name? Nathaniel. It's a lovely name, she says. Okay. And she tells her husband, bottom of page 53, I think it's disgraceful ripping a child from his home so young. And he says it's always been done like that. Apprentices have to come from somewhere. Hello? How about the natural way? Sex. Why doesn't he have a child with his own wife? She says he should be allowed to stay with his family, or at least see them. He says, you know that's impossible. Why? His birth name must be forgotten, or else future enemies will use it to harm him. Not just demons, other magical enemies. How can it be forgotten if his family keeps in contact? Okay. What did she just tell the boy? Tell me your name so that I can call you something. So he's now not going to forget his name, right? Because every day she's going to call him Nathaniel. No one's forced his parents to part with their brat. They didn't want him. That's the truth of it, Martha, or they wouldn't have answered the advertisements. Notice, advertisements in papers. Want a few hundred extra quid? Sell your child. They get a considerable amount of money's compensation. He gets a chance to serve his country at the highest level. And the state gets a new apprentice. Everyone wins. No one loses out. So what does he mean, everyone wins? The kid becomes what? A magician. He gets a government job. Okay? Life's easy from there on out. It would be a lot less cruel if magicians were allowed their own children. That road leads to competing dynasties, family alliances. Kind of extrapolate from this world to our world. Bush, Clinton, Bush. What would have happened if in 2016, Clinton, and then Clinton, let's say, possibly 8 years. You know who's coming up on the other side? The Bush clan? Well, Jeb's probably not going to have a shot. But Jeb's eldest son, George P. Bush, who is not your white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. He's half Hispanic. He speaks Spanish fluently. So he's going to, come in, not the knight in shining armor, but, that's kind of the point she's getting at. Okay? Or, yeah, he's getting at it. It all ends in blood feuds. Read your history books, Martha. See what happened in Italy. Okay? So, Page 55, they keep, the days go on. He says we shouldn't know the boy's name. He's kind of telling her, you got to stop calling him Nathaniel. She's like, I got to call him something. Right? Tutors just call him Underwood after his master. His master only calls him boy. Page 56. He says, you're going to be a magician, Nathaniel, and that is the greatest privilege any boy or girl could have. Your parents have made the ultimate sacrifice by giving you up for this noble destiny. Is it a sacrifice? What is it? What do you do really when you make a sacrifice? There's two kinds really. An Old Testament kind of like sacrifice, or a pagan like sacrifice. What do you sacrifice? Do you sacrifice something that means something to you? But do you sacrifice your child? No. What do? Take Jamari's child. Huh? Or Jamari himself. Why? I don't want to die. I don't want to sacrifice myself because then I don't get anything. I don't live. But I don't care about him. Not literally, okay? So I'm going to sacrifice him. Just the other day, it was announced, last week or so, huge discovery in Peru of an Incan sacrificial burial spot. Hundreds of children in llamas. Don't ask me why. Children and llamas sacrificed together. Why? Not because those parents made the greatest sacrifice. Those parents had no choice in the matter. These parents sacrificed nothing. They got paid for this. Okay? So he says, no, don't cry, dear. Excuse me, this is Mrs. Underwood saying this. Don't cry, dear. So in turn, because she says, your parents made the oak, and that, because he still remembers mom and dad, and he's kind of wondering, why did the dirty, rotten SOBs do this? She goes, no, you must strive. You must be strong. Strive as hard as you can. Learn everything your tutors ask of you. By doing that, you'll honor both your parents and your... He won't honor his parents. Nobody will know who his parents are. How can they be honored by that? What is she telling him? Complete and utter BS. Why? Because she wants him to turn out a good magician. She is as complicit in the quote-unquote wrongdoing as her husband is. Okay? So, a couple minutes left. He goes on learning. We see him progress. Okay? We find out, who the demons are, what they're made of, etc., etc. Page 59. He's being taught history. And Mr. Purcell, his history teacher, says, what's the chief purpose of our noble government? Come on. To rule us. No. To protect us. That's what Purcell says. Notice, Nathaniel says it's to rule us. Who's the us then? We're the lowlifes. The government is the position of power. What is Nathaniel being trained to do? To be a member of that government. Okay? Do not forget our country's at war, and he talks about the war. Okay? So, to be a part of the government and rule honorably, that's what your job's going to be. Do you remember that? Yes, sir. Honor is the most important quality for a magician. Honor. He or she has great power, must use it with discretion. Cue the Spider-Man quote. In the past, rogue magicians have attempted to overthrow the state. They've always been defeated. Why? Because true magicians fight with virtue and justice on their side. Captain America. True magicians, true heroes, notice, are honorable. They're virtuous. They do right things. How old is he? He's still, before he's 10 years old. What does he think when his teachers teach? What did you think? Maybe I shouldn't ask this, but I'm going to. What did you think when you were in elementary school and your teachers taught you stuff? Let's say about, I don't know, American history. God's truth, right? You believed everything. Most people did. He's supposed to believe all this. Well, by the time we get three-way through the novel, what does he come to understand? It's a crock of you-know-what. It's all a lie, okay? All right, we'll stop there. We're going to have to move a lot farther along on Friday. So, have at least half the book read.